all about rows. In this video here, I'm going to break down one of the most fundamental upper body exercises. One of the best tips I ever received from a trainer was that if you want strong, healthy shoulders, you always want to pull more than you push. So essentially, you want to do more rowing exercises or heavier rowing exercises than you would press. And this has been a recipe for not only preventing shoulder injuries, but also too for me in helping clients rehab shoulder injuries. In terms of a row, the biggest thing is that you get the technique down properly, and then from there, in terms of weights lifted or weights used, the sky is essentially the limit. So in terms of technique, one of the things that I reiterate a lot with clients is as I row and I'm pulling back, I want to pull back so that I'm getting good scapular retraction and I'm pulling my elbow back towards my hip so that my humerus locks into my rib cage. There's a little gap here in between my rib cage and where my humerus is actually sitting. So we're not pulling super tight, but we're also not pulling out too wide. And what you want to feel is as I pull up, again, that shoulder blade retracts back and in, which I'll show you a little bit better angle in a second. And also too, we get a little pinch at the bottom of the shoulder blade. So if I sit back here, my row from a back angle view, I'm going to pull. So now my shoulder blade is kind of out and stretched to the side here. And then I'm going to pull back and I'm going to get that little pinch right in the bottom, right in my lower trap where my rhomboids sit. And then I come back out and then I'm going to pull in again nice and strong. The other main muscles that we'll be working are rotator cuff muscles, biceps, as well as lats. So when I perform my row, if I have proper technique here, I'm going to pull in and again, elbow comes to my hip like so, and then I come back down. We get that little pinch. Elbow comes to my hip like so, and then we come back down. An improper row is going to happen in two scenarios. Scenario one is where you pull that elbow up too high. So from here, I pull my elbow up too high. You can see that my elbow is a little bit higher than where my spine sits. And what's going to happen there is my scapula is going to tilt forward, and ultimately it's going to cause my rotator cuff muscle insertions to get some grinding and rubbing, which is what we really don't want. The other thing you can have with a row is where your posture, you're tilted forward and you're in too much spinal flexion, and then from here you might still have good rowing mechanics, but you're not going to be able to get that shoulder blade to retract the way it should and sit back and down and flat into your spine. So it's very important, any rowing variation that you're doing, that you have a good, nice, flat, particularly your thoracic spine. And oftentimes I'll also tell clients, you can always keep your head up with a row, because what that'll do is if I'm tilted into a little bit of flexion here, I lift my head up like so, it's just gonna flatten out that T-spine and allow my scapula or my shoulder blades to move on the path that I want them to move, ultimately making my shoulders stronger and healthier is the key. Now with rowing, bent over rows, this is your classic bent over row where I have my knee down, foot's gonna come out to the side. I wanna make sure that my hips are level and square. So we never wanna have that foot out where my hip would be hiked higher and I could potentially rotate through my spine. Keep that foot down and then the back heel stays up like so. And then we push this hand in. I'm going to get my core brace nice and strong, spine nice and neutral. We pull in, come back, pull in, come back. Now, as you get heavier with your rows, so long as you have proper technique, it's okay. There's a 10% variance with rows and with curls where you can actually have a little bit of elbow grease or elbow juice, whatever you want to call it, where you're pulling up. So if I'm doing, let's say a set of 15, I pull 1, 2, 3, where I have just a little bit of that rocking going on, totally okay, but not too much to the point where you're overextending through your spine or you're rotating through your spine. Where that sort of rocking comes from is just a little bit with the knee, and we pull up and maintain that neutral spine as we do so. Placing my hand into the bench nice and strong is again going to help support my lower back. And the row is also a really good anti-core exercise. So what I mean by that is we're training a lot of our core muscles, but we're not actually doing any movement. They're staying in a static position, much like would happen with a plank. And then we're performing that exercise. So we're strengthening our core as well as those major pulling muscles. Now with rowing variations, you have your standard bent over row, knee comes down, hand places in, we pull up and down like so, and then from there we can manipulate our row to get our core muscles to work a little bit harder. So we can do something like a 3-point staggered stance row. We're gonna have the bench up like this, and then from here, I'm gonna require a little more activation. I'll probably have to go a little bit lighter on the weight than I would with my standard row, and then same thing, we're gonna pull up, bring that elbow to that hip. Same mechanics in terms of the pulling phase, but again, we're working a little bit stronger through our core to maintain good stability. Now, another variation that would demand more from our core, we can have our feet staggered out like this. Another variation of our 3-point row, where that one's going to be really demanding and a really good anti-rotation exercise. And then from there, we can also get rid of the bench entirely. Now this one I would definitely have to go lighter with my weights on, but we got your standard bent over row, just with dumbbells, pulling in, same mechanics, 2 hands at the same time, just like so. We can do T rows, where we pull out wide. That's just gonna target a little bit different muscles in our rotator cuff. So lots and lots of variations. And again, your row, excellent exercise for building up muscles like your biceps, your lats, rotator cuff muscles, everything in your upper back, but also too, depending on the variation you choose, really good for building up your core. And then from here, once we've mastered our dumbbell rows, we can move up to things like inverted rows. So those would be your TRX rows. Fairly advanced exercise. They require you to have a certain level of strength because you're going to be pulling your own body weight. And you also have barbell bent over rows, which are much like your bent over rows with dumbbells, where you have a lot of core recruitment, core activation. It's just like holding a plank. Basically, you're holding a plank. You got to be nice and strong, nice and neutral through here as you pull up and down. And with those, again, you have that 10% variance, and a little bit of rocking is okay, but not too much, and not that it's causing anything happening through your lower back. In terms of rowing exercises and weight, with clients and with some of the female clients that I've trained, I've had them upwards to doing 6 to 8 reps with a 60-pound dumbbell. With something like your bent over rows, you would be less, but a big milestone for me with clients is where they get to that 25 pounds. 25 pounds for 12 reps per side is a really good sort of entry level to being an advanced rower, and then from there you can continue to build. One of the things that I find when working with clients is they always underestimate their ability to row, and they'll be rowing things like, or dumbbells like 12s and 15s, when really they can jump right up to 25s and they have the strength for that, and then they can start to build on top of it. With your double dumbbell rows, where you're holding that plank, you want to reduce that weight by anywhere from 50 to 75%. So sorry, you would do 50 to 75% of your, let's say, standard bent over row. So if I can do a 40-pounder for my standard bent over row, I'm going to use 25 pounds or 30s for my standing double arm bent over row. And then with barbell rows, if you get into that, starting with a barbell is definitely advanced, and just pulling, making sure you have that good mechanics. As you pull, getting good retraction through your shoulder blades, keeping that T-spine nice and flat, and then moving up with 10s on each side, which would be 65 pounds, is definitely another great milestone to hit. 75 pounds is probably that upper limit, because again, with this exercise here, you have to stay nice and strong and neutral through your core. You're holding that plank as you're performing the rowing exercise. So 75 is the heaviest that I've ever had any of my strongest female clients do for their rows. All that to say, happy rowing. With this exercise, don't be afraid to sort of test your limits. The biggest thing you want to avoid when rowing is, again, as I mentioned, rotating through your lower back, and also too much upper track recruitment. If you start to feel it in your neck and it's straining your neck, then that's when you know the weight is too heavy. But so long as you feel your shoulder blade come back, you have those good rowing mechanics, you feel that sort of tuck in at the bottom of your shoulder blade where that lower trap is, then you're doing a great job. And if you want to be aware of what your rowing looks like, very, very simple. Just set up your phone at the side, perform your row, make sure you don't have that big wing up here. Make sure you're pulling back and in like so. And what you should see at the top of your row is just that humerus lock into your rib cage like so, and you'll be good to go. So the last thing I'll leave you with is, if you've been doing exercise for a while and you want a nice little surprise, one of the things I often encourage clients to do, especially if they've been rowing and they're getting a little more advanced in their rowing, is to take a belfie or a back selfie and just hold your muscles up and take that picture of your back, and I guarantee you'll be really surprised at some of the definition you have. And oftentimes when I'm showing clients pictures of them doing, or not pictures, but videos of their technique with bent over rows, they go, oh wow, I didn't realize I have so much definition. So it's a very, very encouraging thing, and an encouraging thing to continue to row and to continue to get stronger at your row.